Hello, welcome to Autobot YouTube channel. So today we are going to learn how you can bulk upload the data to the entity which you create in the orchestrator. Okay, so in the first two part of this manage entity series, we have seen like what are the different activities and how you can enable data service in orchestrator and how you can activate manage entities in Studio, then how you can add the data to the entity which you create in the data service. So all these things that we have seen, right? So we are going to cover like how you can upload the data bulk into the entity which you are creating. Okay, instead of creating single by single, how you can do that. For that, let me check for the data service activity. Okay, so in the first video, the part 1 video, we gone through all these activities. So these are the activities which will help you to action on item one by one, right? Then in the part 2 video, we have gone through all these activities like delete file, then download file, upload file to the record field, right? So today we are going to learn about how you can create multiple entity records. Okay, for example, so this was one sample entity which we created in the previous demo. Okay, and we created two fields, that is student name as well as the subject, and these are the default field which got created while we created this entity, right? While we create the sample entity, all these files got auto generated, right? And we manually created these two fields. So I'm going to add one more field. Let me name it like display name. Okay, let me put it like a country. Okay, then type I'm going to keep it like a okay test. Okay, or we'll do one thing, let me put it like a mark. Okay, type we can keep it like a number. Okay, this field is required. Okay, I'm saving it. Okay, so here you can see a new field got generated. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, so this is one field which we generated in our part 2 video, right? So suppose just consider like if you have an Excel sheet, okay, of some around 1000 data, okay, 1000 rows of data, and if you want to add all this data to your entity, how you can do that? So the one option is like you can call up this create entity record and create one by one. But suppose if you want to do it in a bulk, like instead of calling this data service each and every time for each row, how you can do that in bulk? Okay, so that's what we are going to check today. Okay, so that can be achieved using create multiple entity record. Okay, so for that, first let me create an Excel sheet. Okay, let me name it like data service. Okay, let me open this. Okay, so what are the fields that we need to upload? One is student name, then subject and the mark, right? So name, subject, then mark. Okay, so subject, let me give it like name, let me give it like Mark John Rita Mary Kishore. Okay, subject, let me put it like a mathematics, physics, then chemistry, networking, B. Okay, so these are some dummy data. Okay, so let me give the mark like 78, 87, 67, 88, then 91. Okay, so let me save this Okay, so this data we are going to upload to our data entity, that is sample entity. Okay, so that's what we are going to do now. Instead of adding one by one, we are going to add it in bulk. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to use this activity, right? Create multiple entity records. So let me drag and drop this activity and let us understand what are the properties that we need to set. So first one is entity type. So this is nothing but our sample entity, right? So this is our entity. So we have to choose to which entity that we need to upload. Okay, so manage entity dot sample entity. Then we need to provide an input record and the output record, right? So an input record, it's a collection of record to be created for the selected entity type, must be of the same type as a selected entity type. Okay, so it's a collection of data which should be of type a selected entity type, right? So what is the entity type? That is a sample entity, so it should be a collection of a sample entity data. Okay, and here we have the type argument as manage entity dot sample entity, and batch on failure, then we setting it the depth like 2, so it will be from a range of 1 to 3, and by default it is 2. And if you want to get the output record, you can create a variable over here, or if you want to get a failed records, you can create a variable for this. So let me show you by creating a record, variable in record. Okay, and for this one I'm going to create out record. Okay, so that's it. So here if you go inside, you can see this in record is a I collection of a sample entity. Okay, so this is a collection of I sample entity, and out record is a list of a sample entity. Okay, so what we're going to do is okay, so let's consider, okay, we have a set of data, right? Or okay, so let the first data be like mark mathematics, then 78, right? Then the next value is like John, then physics, then the mark is 87, right? So just consider if you have only two data, okay, two set of data. So this is a collection of sample entity item, right? So we are going to upload these items to our entity, and these are the individual items. Okay, so these are the individual row of items which need to be added to the sample entity, right? So we have to, what we have to do, we need to create a collection which we already created, that is in collection. Also we need to create a variable for this individual item, right? So we need to create a variable for this individual item. So I will show you where we need to use it. Okay, so create a multiple entity record is there. So we provided all the variables and output field and all. For reading this Excel sheet, we have to use either Excel activity or we can use the read range itself, right? So let me use read range. Let me go to that document, desktop, automation, data service, right? Data service. And let me remove this field, and we need to create an output variable dt. Okay, so this is of type data table. So we cannot add the data table to a collection of sample entity, right? We have to convert this data table to a collection, or first we have to create that to a individual set, and we need to add that to a collection, right? So that's what we need to do. So for that we'll have to use add to collection activity. Okay, so add to collection activity we have to use. Okay, so how we can add to collection? So what is the collection that we created? That is in record, right? So that is a collection that we created. And here the error, because the type is of object, right? So just convert that to sample entity. Now the error has gone. And the second field is item, right? So item is nothing but the individual record. Okay, so these are the individual record which we need to upload as each row for the sample entity, right? So we need to create a variable over here, right? So let me create it, single data. Okay, so this is of type sample entity. So what I'm going to do is add to data, single data, that is done. And how we need to add the single data? So the single data is each row, right? So in the Excel sheet, each row is equal to the single data, right? So we need to loop through this Excel sheet. So for that, I'm going to use for activity for each row in data table. Okay, it's DT. So we need to loop through each row. Then what we have to do? We need to add the data to the item, right? To the single data, we need to add it. So what I'm going to do is we need to use the assign activity. Let me use multiple assign. Okay. So we need to add 3 rows of data, right? So what we need to do, single data is of type sample entity, right? So we'll get all the field of the sample entity dot student name equal to current row of name, right? So name is the column label to string. Okay, so that's it. Then here what is the next field? Single data dot subject into current row of a subject. Okay, so what is the last field? Single data dot data dot mark. Okay, so why mark is not coming means like let me add it over there. We added a new field, but that is not updated to our manage entity, right? So what I'm going to do is just to refresh this orchestrator connection. Okay, so now our manage entity is active. Click on this. There is a change. Just to save it. Okay, so if you change it, what are the changes that you made to your entity? Those changes it will get reflected in the studio. Okay, so the error is gone, and no, the error is not gone. Why the error is not gone? It is mark, right? It is mark, and the value should be current row of mark, right? And it is of type integer, right? So what we need to do, let me try it with cint, convert to int, then dot to string, and okay, so that's it. We are getting the string value, then we are converting that to integer because this entity type is of a mark is of a number type, right? So that's why we convert that to integer. So that's it. Okay, then what's the next step? We need to add this to the collection, right? So let me put it inside our loop. Okay, so add to collection. So in record to this particular collection, we are going to add the item. Okay, so inside the loop, it will create the collection, and after that, it will add the collection to our entity. Okay, so I hope that is clear. And here we need to do one more thing. Okay, and let me execute this, and I will show you what we missed in this script. Okay, sorry, we need to close this file. Let me execute again. Current row of name dot to string to single data multiple assign through. Okay, so what is error? Dot student name. Okay, so what is that field? Let me check. DataService. This is name only, correct? Name, and we need to get the value name. Then we need to add that to toString. That is correct. Then what is the next value? It's a subject, and the last one is mark, right? So what we mixed? Student, subject. It's a student name, right? Current row data toString. Let's see what is the error which is coming. It is of type sample entity. That's also correct. Okay, we will get that error again. Process. Sorry, I opened the file. Okay, just re-execute again. We cannot assign current row to string to single data student name. This is because we haven't initialized our collection. Okay, so we need to initialize our collection, otherwise we will be getting this error. So what I'm going to do is we need to initialize the collection, right? So what is our collection? That is in record equal to new collection of, what should be the type? It should be of type sample entity, right? So we initialize the collection. Let's try to execute again. Okay, and now we didn't initialize our single item. Okay, we forgot to initialize our single variable. So let's try to initialize our single data as well. Okay, so single data, what is single data? Single data equal to new sample entity, right? So now let's try to execute. This time it should work. Okay, so you can see our manage entity execution started and it ended in 2 seconds. So let's go to our entity. Just refresh this. Okay, so here you can see a new set of data got added, right? So what happened here? It created a collection, and by single call to the data service, it created the entire data in the data entity. Okay, so let me go through the script again. So what we did, first we read the Excel file. Okay, from there we got the data table. Okay, then we initialized our collection. Okay, we need to initialize the collection as well as we need to initialize the single data, that is of the type sample entity. We need to initialize it. Okay, even if it's a list also, we need to initialize that particular list. So the same thing that we have did, initialize using new collection of what is the type, that is of type sample entity, right? We initialize that. Then using a for each, we cannot convert a data table directly to a collection, right? So what we do, we use for each row in data table activity, and we got each row from that data table, right? Then we are assigning that value to each field in the data entity. Okay, so sample entity is our entity, and for each field, that is student name, then subject and mark, which are the field that we created, mark and subject. So to those fields we are assigning the value from the row. Okay, from the data table we are adding that. Okay, so before to that, what we did, we initialized the single data as well. So this single data is of type sample entity, right? So this is of individual sample entity, and this is a collection of a sample entity. So you need to keep it in mind. And what we did, so once these values are added to single data, we are adding this single data to the collection. So collection is in record and we are adding the item is our single data, so we are adding that. And here you need to keep the type argument as same as our entity name. Okay, so here sample entity is our entity name, so we need to choose the same sample entity. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So whatever the name of your entity, you need to give those names over here. Okay, new sample entity. So suppose if here is like some sample entity 1. Okay, your entity name is some sample entity 1, means you need to give that as new sample entity 1. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So we are adding everything to collection, and once it is adding to collection, then we are adding directly that to our entity. Okay, we are directly adding that to our entity. So in record, then we are selecting the type argument as a sample entity. Then out record anyway we are not using, but we created just to showcase what is the type of out argument that we are getting. Okay, a list of sample entity. So I hope that you are clear about this concept, how to use this create multiple entity records. So this will be very much helpful if you need to upload a huge set of data. Okay, instead of calling our data service for each record, we can create it like a collection. Then that collection we can call inside our create multiple entity record, and we can push all the data in a single code. Okay, so if you find this video useful, please like the video, please share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe our channel. So thanks for watching the video. Bye.